Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosevich and George Stoia here from the SoonerScoop.com studios on historic Campus Corner. I got to add in, it's historic. This is a national monument. It's going to be good to see Calvin back around roaming the streets.
Yeah, what the hell was that about?
Norman Transcript. Might be out of business soon, but for now, they're going to employ Calvin. I don't know. Should we say that?
We were going to hire him here at Scoop.
Yeah. I guess we weren't. I'm being told we weren't in my ear. He could have worked for us, though. He could have been George and I's intern. Welcome back, though. The game day preview for Houston, presented by Football Factory, BigGameUSA.com/scoop. Everybody has seen the Nike Vapor Elite ball that you can get from there. Obviously, we'll kind of feature that here in a second. Good conversation coming up with Rob Sellers from Cougars Digest to kind of get into the first year of the Willie Fritz era. The first game of the Willie Fritz era certainly didn't go, I think, as planned. 27-7 loss.
They stunk
against UNLV, but at the same time, it is a step up in competition with Temple coming to town.
Yeah, look, the athletes are better. That's for certain. I think Houston's going to have some better athletes out there. Obviously, a couple names that we're very familiar with, Latrell McCutcheon, Jamal Morris, two guys that were obviously part of the Lincoln Riley area. They seem to be a big part of this defense. And then on the offensive side, got some transfers. Obviously, Donovan Smith at quarterback. I think he's going to be a better player than what Oklahoma saw a week ago. I know that offensive line is kind of the weak spot for Houston, but this is a game I think we all think that OU should go out and dominate. And I think when you look at Oklahoma, there's a few spots that I'm sure we'll get into in this show and that we've talked about all week that you'd like to see OU improve upon.
Real quick before we get to some of the video with Brent Venables, some of the players that we talked to here earlier in the week, just in terms of offensive line, I know there's been a lot of stuff flying out there. We recorded the show on Tuesday, obviously, after the Brent Venables press conference. Maybe a little bit more information about center in terms of what they're going to do there with the injury to Branson Hickman.
We'll see.
Okay, all right. Well, that's about right, though.
I mean, I just don't know who's going to be available. I don't think Branson Hickman's going to be able to play. I mean, when you suffer an ankle sprain like that, it's tough to come back this quickly. So I doubt that he's able to give it a go. Garen Hatchett, I think will start at center. We'll see. I know Josh Bates is getting some first-team reps this week in practice. How much of that is, Hatchett dealing with a little bit of a bicep injury, and so you want to maybe hold him out during the week, and how much of it is, hey, we might give Josh Bates a look this week at center with the first team. We'll see. I think other than that, Troy Everett, it does not sound like he will be able to go. I know I asked, you saw it in the practice report, I asked Brent Venables. He's close. I think if he was available to play, Brent would have said he's available to play. I think he's probably still, 2, 3, 4 weeks away from being able to get on the field. So I would assume it's going to be Hatchett or Josh Bates. Like I said, we'll see. I do think Jake Taylor
there's
will be
the
back.
Good news. You're getting Jake Taylor back into the rotation.
And we'll see. I know there's some people out there skeptical to see if he'll actually play. I do think he's going to try and give it a go. If it got out there and they're like, look, it's Houston and we don't want to risk it, that wouldn't surprise me as well either.
It'll be interesting. Obviously, that is something that we will be checking out pregame-wise, just in terms of who's in, who's out. What does this look like with the first and second, third-team units that they're running through during the pregame stuff? Earlier in the week, Brent Venables did kind of preview everything that's to come with Houston, as well as hearing from Billy Bowman, Kani Walker, and Damonic Williams about their first experience out on the floor of the Palace last Friday.
Coach Willie Fritz and his staff are coming in here this weekend. They lost a tough opener to UNLV. UNLV played really, really well and controlled the game, running the football, possessing the football. Really think Houston has an aggressive, physical, disruptive defense. They've got a couple of former Sooners on their defense as well, and they brought a couple of several transfers, but a couple from Tulane where they played excellent defense. Number 2 and number 5 are really good football players, guys that have played a lot of football. I believe they have roughly 17, I think, players in their 2 deep that are seniors, and then several others that are juniors. Only, I think, 3 freshmen that are in their 2 deep. So it's an older team, but it is a new team. Over half their team is brand new. Coach Fritz's teams, the last 2 years, they're 10-0 in true road games. so he knows how to get his guys ready. The last time they were here representing Tulane at the time, obviously it went down to the wire, and we were able to pull it out 40-35.
Yeah, we did good. Obviously, we're not where we want to be, but we're going to make a big jump from week 1 to week 2. But I feel like we played good. I feel like we played together. We communicated. We prepared well. Shout out to our coaches for helping us stay on top of everything. But ultimately, I feel like we played good. We fly to the ball, and we played together.
Of course, we still got room to go. It's always the first game, you know, so all the jitters and butterflies kind of go away once you go into the first game. But, you know, I feel like it was a pretty good game overall by the team, man. I'm really proud of my guys that stepped up, proud of my guys that played a younger role that had to step up as well. When their name was called, when their number was called, I was really excited for my young guys to get in there and show out too. So I feel like it was a good game.
I was so proud of him. I mean, you know, everybody has like their little jitters before the game. I'm over there just trying to hype him up and just let him know that he got this and he's been here before and he knows what to do, and just make sure that he believed in himself that he can do it.
Damonic Williams. We'll have more on Grayson Halton and some of the interior defensive linemen here in a second. You see, George has the football. Big Game Football Factory. All you got to do to get this official football. This is the football that Oklahoma uses on Saturdays, and it's actually really neat. It's handcrafted and custom made by the specifications of the Oklahoma quarterback. So Jackson Arnold had a little bit of knowledge in putting into this ball.
Yeah, this is specially made for Oklahoma. Obviously, like you said, Jackson Arnold, kind of like what he likes. I have to give a special shout out to Peter and Barbara Oven.
Ooh,
they got one.
Love it.
And it'll be out at their tailgate, I believe, this week for the Houston game, and they love it. They love tossing it around. Obviously, a great centerpiece to maybe have in your home, but also at your tailgate.
Absolutely.
Showing it off. It's not just any normal football.
It includes the technical specs like the Rebel Plus lace and the SRS stripe with white stitching for optimal off-lace grip. And sometimes you see Jackson Arnold not catching it on the grips, which
he's
Harry
a baller.
Pointed out. It's kind of crazy how he does it, too. All you got to do, though, to get this exact football, go to biggameusa.com/scoop, biggameusa.com/scoop to get your hands on it. And Oklahoma's defensive tackles got their hands on a number of Temple Owls on Friday night. You would kind of expect the same if you see the same offensive line that trotted out against UNLV in Game 1. Another really good opportunity, though, for that interior defensive tackle group, if nothing else, to get a little bit of confidence.
Look, they had 6 sacks last week. I think that they could probably get close to that number, maybe even more this week. I believe the all-time school record is 9 in a game. I'm not saying they're going to break that, but I do think that they're going to be able to get after Donovan Smith. He's a mobile guy too, though. He's tough to bring down. I mean, I think he's like 6'6", 240. He's a big quarterback, but I do think that especially on the tackles, like I could see Ethan Downs and R. Mason Thomas kind of having a big day. I think that that's really where Houston is the weakest, is at the tackle position. And so you'd love to see that, right? Again, I think that it's kind of like what we said with Temple. How much do you really take from that? Because I just don't think Houston's very good. But this is a team that OU should dominate up front. Kind of like a year ago, you came out of the Arkansas State game, they only had 1 sack. This year it seems like that pass rush, especially guys like Grayson Halton, Ethan Downs, R. Mason Thomas, DJ Terry, Damonic Williams. These guys, it seems like they've really progressed as pass rushers, and I think that this is another game where you could see that sack number continue to increase.
We got a good look at Damonic Williams in an Oklahoma uniform for the first time in the Temple game. What'd you think of his performance as well as some of the guys around him?
Tough to move. That's a guy that, look, like, is he going to go out there and get 10 sacks this season? I don't think so. It's really hard at that position. But I think he's somebody that is incredibly difficult to move. He gets a really good push. He pushes guys back, and he causes a lot of problems. He may not always be the guy that gets the sack, right? But I think that he's somebody that maybe opens up things for other people. He can take on 2 guys on the offensive line and maybe open up a space for someone else. And so I was really impressed with him. Again, he might not show up in the box score every single week, but in terms of a guy that takes up a lot of space and is very tough to move, there's nobody better on Oklahoma's roster right now than Damonic Williams.
Here is Brent Venables talking about his interior defensive tackles and their performance against Temple and moving forward into the season, as well as Damonic Williams talking about his first game in an Oklahoma uniform.
It's really hard. The challenges from an offensive line standpoint are only going to continue to get more and more difficult. But getting knocked back, getting disruption, not allowing the quarterback to climb in the pocket, moving him, quote unquote, off the spot, if you will. That's disruption that you need to be a successful defense. And so those guys, their ability, their explosiveness, their athletic ability, their strength at the point of attack, their ability to continue to move their feet, will allow us to have a chance to continue to improve and get better and be a successful defense.
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, our coach is so proud of us, but our mindset is want to know. So, I mean, every day just want to know. It's in the past now. Let's get better.
It's only been a couple months, but how different are you as a player? What's improved the most since coming here?
I would say my speed and my strength and knowing a lot more about football. Because at TCU, I would say I had a very young mindset, and I wasn't very much concerned about different type of sets and everything like that. But now I know that certain type of sets, what formation is giving me what runs and passes and things like that.
Safe to say Coach Bates has helped you out a lot in
that
regard.
Yes. Yes, indeed. I mean, he had me up there in his office probably at least every day or every other day during this whole process.
What was it like going through the first game with him?
It was a great time indeed. I mean, just seeing how he coaches, it was an experience, I can say, because I came from a coach who had a mindset where we gotta get this done, and like there's nothing involved. Like just make sure you get your job done. But once we have a little bit of success, he's like, okay, we're gonna mix and match some things now, instead of just having the same people go out.
I think it's safe to say that Damonic Williams, who celebrated a birthday this week.
Happy birthday.
It's a little bit late. It's belated now.
Yeah.
Do you feel bad about that?
No.
It's safe to say that has been a really good transition.
Yeah, definitely. I think that he has really fit in well. Got the start this past week, and I believe he'll start again this week. But I think he's just going to get better every single week, understanding the defense, knowing what they're asking him to do. And I know a lot of people out there are probably like, well, what exactly are they asking the interior defensive linemen to do? There's a lot that goes into it in terms of stunts and where they want them and kind of taking on however many blockers you want them to take on and those sorts of things. So there's more involved maybe in a Brent Venables defense than elsewhere. And so it might take him some time, but like I said before we cut to the clip, he's somebody that is a really great run stuffer. I think he's going to come up huge in SEC play, and is somebody that I think is improving his pass rushing skill. I think Grayson Halton's probably their best interior pass rusher right now. He might be the best pass rusher on the team from what we saw a week ago, but I do think Damonic Williams is going to play a huge role for this team moving forward.
It might be a little bit of a different position, but just in terms of a defensive line and understanding what you need to do, we'll have a little bit more from Trace Ford here later on in the program, and maybe it gives you just at least a little bit of a better idea of the difficulty and the understanding of where you need to be at a certain time. First things first, though, we'll get to our interview now with Rob Sellers from Cougars Digest, kind of digging in on everything with Willie Fritz's program down at Houston. Now welcoming in Rob Sellers from Cougar Digest with 24/7 Sports. Rob, how's it going? I understand that the opening week probably wasn't what a lot of people envisioned when Willie Fritz takes over after a really good run at Tulane, but let's start here. Just in terms of overall rebuild with Houston, it sounds like the program, obviously after the 5 seasons with Dana Holgerson, there was maybe a little bit of lethargy just in terms of overall interest in the program. How big of an uphill battle is this going to be for Willie Fritz to get this thing turned around?
It's going to be a pretty big task. I know last week probably isn't the whole indicator, but I'm sure they'll get better as the season goes along, and hopefully they get a little better each week because that was pretty rough. The first game, definitely not what everyone was expecting. I mean, everyone knew that this was going to be a rebuild for him, but he's got a really good track record of doing that at every stop he's been at, and making that program successful. And this is his opportunity to at this highest level finally that he's coached at in the Power Four now. So it's a huge task, but kind of in the era that we're in now with NIL and the transfer portal, that'll help a little bit, of course. But similar to getting the fans out and in the stands for games, it's tough. They don't, they've got a few big boosters or whatever that give to the program, but they don't have the fan base that's as broad as pretty much everybody else in the Big 12 for sure. And so that's probably his biggest task is how can he get the fans interested enough to be willing to buy into the program. You've got the older crowd, of course, that they probably don't care too much for the NIL, and so trying to be nice there when I said that. But they've also they've changed the way things are. Everyone knew Houston for the commuter school forever. Everyone in the city commuted to that school. No one lived there. There was even that long stretch where they didn't even play games on campus. They played at the Astrodome. And so there's a huge gap of the fan base that was just there to go to school. They didn't ever buy into sports. They didn't, basketball. Basketball is finally getting a little better, of course, because Coach Champ's doing such a good job. But they now have, if I'm not mistaken, it's the second largest number of on-campus housing in the state. So I think that's a big start. You get kids on campus, you get them living there, you get them used. They had a great student turnout for the first game, actually more tickets than they even gave out for the Texas game last year, which is Houston's biggest home game. And so they've done a great job of getting the students there. It's just going to take time for them to build that fan base up and graduate those kids, let them go start becoming successful enough where they want to be season ticket holders and contributors. So if he can find a good way to get the fans excited, which unfortunately starts with winning, then I think he has a shot to it'll still be a process, but I think he's got a chance to be successful. They've done a heck of a job in recruiting out of the gate this year.
Sure.
And they've already got 226 commits as well. So recruiting wise, it's going to be there. It's just going to be about can they stay competitive in the transfer portal, which is a tough deal. And it just like always, offensive tackles. It's always been a problem. Offensive line in general has always been a problem getting the studs at U of H. They've done a little bit better job. Again, this recruiting class, they've got a 4-star offensive guard probably. Well, I think he's a tackle, but he's one of those tweener guys. We'll have to see how his feet look. But it's a big uphill battle for him. So I think he's the right guy to do it after, the whiplash that we got down here from the last guy to this guy, it was just amazing. Yeah, as you can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rob, let's talk about last week. Obviously, not the performance that Houston wanted against UNLV, but let's start with Donovan Smith at quarterback. Obviously, a guy that's played a lot of college football, comes over from Texas Tech, was the starter a year ago. 15 of 30, 135 yards, 2 interceptions. Just what was your takeaway from his performance a week ago? And I know that I believe Willie Fritz said that there's not going to be any change in quarterback there.
Yeah, they'd gone in with a plan of playing 2 quarterbacks. Deion Chris is the backup, came over from Louisiana, young guy. They came into the game with the plan. They did give him a series early on, but he got dinged up and never came back in. And then they ended up putting the third string guy in late, and he actually drove them to their only touchdown. So he looked pretty crisp. But for Donovan Smith, it was a rough first week. I've seen him play better. The offensive line did him no favors. There were a lot of miscommunication up front, and first game, new system. I get it a little bit, but it was really rough. There were just guys running free, and so he didn't have a ton of time back there really. And when he did have some time, he wasn't the most accurate. And so when he did have a little bit of time, his passes weren't perfect, and some of them were caught, some of them weren't type deal. So I thought he would be a better quarterback. And I'm not going to base it all, of course, just off this one game, but I thought he would be an improved player this year in this system because they're going to be focused more on trying to establish the run, and there's still going to be a balanced offense, but Coach Fritz really harps on running the football. And so unfortunately, when you go back to the offensive line, which is the same culprit for messing up some of Smith's efforts last week, it's also going to be an uphill battle on that front. So this coaching staff's got to find a way to get the best out of what they do have, and what can they do successfully, and find a way to go with that. And that's a change already too from last year. The last staff was very stubborn. They just wanted square peg, round hole type deal. They were just gonna try to keep running the same thing regardless type deal, and they didn't really put a lot of effort into changing the offense any to fit what they had. So I thought that Smith would be a little bit better, and like I said, we won't just go solely off the first game, but with him being more a part of the offense, because he's a big guy and he can run, and he can move, so I kind of thought I would see more of that this year in the offense, but when they're having as many problems with blocking up front as they were, you know what I mean? And then you fell behind early and you didn't have much choice but to start passing more. So that's what Fritz said immediately after that game too, is he felt like they got away from the running a little bit too early than they should have. And so that's one of those things I think you'll see them adjust this week.
Just 25 attempts for 50 yards last week against UNLV. I would imagine a bunch of Houston fans, are they still wondering why Parker Jenkins only had 2 carries last week for just 17 yards?
Yes, absolutely. That was a big topic of discussion on the board. And that's also something I think Fritz touched on. It was kind of a product of the situation partly, but also I think Parker maybe is not their best pass blocker. And so that played into it as well, as they went more pass heavy, and they were having already so much problem with protection. They wanted to have some of the other guys in there that are a little stronger pass blocking.
Who are some of the guys just on the skill position, just in terms of wide receivers that maybe Oklahoma fans should keep an eye on? Mekhi Muse obviously coming in from Georgia. I think he had a nice 50-yarder last weekend. Outside of him, who are some of the guys that Donovan Smith will be relying on come Saturday night?
Joseph Manjak's a guy that he's made some circus catches. He was the guy that tipped the ball last year in the into the West Virginia game when they had the Hail Mary.
Yeah,
he tipped it to Boogie Johnson, which is the other receiver. And so Manjak, he's a real unique guy. He doesn't wear gloves. He gets a lot of attention for that from the media and stuff like that. And so, but he's very sure-handed, and he's one of those guys. He's just so good at everything he does. He goes full out. And he's very crisp. He's a great route runner. Get the ball near him and he'll catch it. Good blocker on the outside. And so I'm hoping to see him have an even better year this year, with maybe if they can get the ball rolling a little bit better on offense. But Boogie Johnson's another receiver. He caught the Hail Mary last year, and he's back for another year. And you mentioned Mekhi Muse. He looked real good on that punt return. Kind of what we've seen all since spring, since he's been here. And unfortunately, there was a hold on that punt return, and it ended up, like Coach said, it was a 60-yard penalty by the time we went back from where we got the ball at. So Mekhi Muse is a part of the offense. There's a couple of players that came in from Tulsa, and Marquise Shoulders and Devin Williams. Those guys have come in, and Shoulders has been running with ones, and Williams with the second round of wide receivers. So those guys, those are pretty much the primary. Jonah Wilson is a young guy. He's only a redshirt freshman, I believe, and so he's got a great body. That was one of the wins for the last staff. They actually flipped him from Texas last year. He wanted to stay home, and I don't know, what all entailed that, but it was a right fit for him, and so he's looked good. He's young and getting better still as well.
Rob, I want to ask you about the defensive side of the football. And firstly, Latrell McCutcheon and Jamal Morris, 2 guys that obviously Oklahoma fans are very familiar with. How pivotal are they a part of this defense? I know McCutcheon starts. I think Jamal Morris actually led the team in tackles last week at linebacker. How big and how critical are those 2 guys to that defense?
Very, very big. Latrell must have been the very last NCAA player to ever sit a year out for transferring, because he had to sit out last year when he came, because he had, of course, left you guys and went to USC with Lincoln Riley. If you're allowed to say that on here, I hope
it'll be bleeped out.
Yeah, okay. There, just bleep it out later. There you go. That's perfect. And so he sat out last year. His younger brother actually signed with Houston as well. He's an up and coming linebacker. He's only a redshirt freshman as well. but he's going to be a good one too. He's already starting to make plays a lot, and so I think he'll see the field more this year. But McCutcheon, of course, just phenomenal corner. He's developed pretty well. We'll see how well he's developed this week. Obviously, it'll be his first big test. But he's looked really good going back to the spring, and he's kind of held down that first corner position. You mentioned Morris, of course, just a phenomenal kid, great kid. Another guy that's as I'm saying it out loud, I'm going in my brain. Where did he come from again? And I was like, oh yeah, I know where he came from. So that brings an interesting, mix to it this week with those guys going back up there. I don't know how you guys fans are for players returning or whatnot. I don't think they left in bad terms, but you know how that goes with college fan bases. So I think probably those two are the two keys. The other guy back in the back end, Adoree Halsey, or AJ Halsey is what he goes by, but phenomenal. He's a bit of a headhunter. I hope it doesn't get him in trouble. I always worry when I see him coming in because, I mean, he loves to get in there and hit, and he really does. And I'm afraid one of these days he's going to get that targeting call because, I mean, he arrives with bad intentions for sure. So those three are probably the leadership group as far as the older, more mature players on the defense. And it's a little bit new defense as well. They went with a three-man front. It looks more like a four-man front because they walked that edge guy up pretty much the whole game anyway. So there's four guys up there, but it's technically a three-man front with a nose tackle, a nose guard, and an end. And so it had actually, I thought they played pretty well last week, to be honest with you. They only gave up 20 of those points. 7 of them was off a pick six from Donovan. And so they only gave up 20 points. UNLV, I want to say they scored up in the 30s last year. So the defense played well enough for them to win that game last week. It's just they had zero offensive output. So we'll see. Again, this is a big test for them. Maybe in a different year, coming off of a different situation, some people will be a little bit more excited for Houston to, go up there and have the opportunity to line up with the big boys and be a little bit more hopeful. But it's been not a lot of hope per se. Everyone's just hoping they show up and they look good and they look like they at least belong on the field with them up there.
How much, how much worry, concern was there just in terms of the front seven defensively? Give up 195 on the ground last week to UNLV. It seemed like that was kind of the bread and butter of what the Rebels wanted to get done. How much concern is that moving forward into the rest of the season? And then obviously playing an Oklahoma team that struggled at times last week just in terms of what they were doing in the run game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be better. It's they definitely got to clean up some of the missed tackles. That was a problem. I don't know if that was just obviously. Hopefully, that's not an epidemic that's going on. It's just one of those first week type deals. And I know they've got a lot to work on, but I think the front seven's good. They've got some good backers. They brought in this player from Louisiana. It might have been Louisiana Monroe, one of the small schools over there. His name's Michael Batten, and he's on his last year. He only had 1 year when he got there, but he's been a solid addition. He's starting alongside Morris. So, and they've got a good, actually that's probably their deepest spot is their linebacker spot. So they rotate them a lot. I think that's good. Obviously, they've got some decent depth on the defensive line, but some new faces as well. Keith Cooper is a guy up there that came over with Fritz from Tulane, and he had a really good game last week. And so I think they'll be all right as long as they could be more sound. There was only a couple mishaps in terms of like blown coverages or something like that. There was a play where one of the safeties back there, Webb, the ball wasn't even near the receiver yet, and he just plowed through. He didn't know where the ball was. He never actually looked for it, and so he made up for it. He came back the next play and blitzed up from the back end and actually made a stop at the line of scrimmage real good. So he kind of made up for there. But those little type things that you hope are just week one deals and they can clean up. I think the defense is definitely the stronger side of the ball. So I think they know the test they have this week, and I think they're kind of excited to test themselves a bit against them.
Rob, you mentioned earlier, there's just from the fan base, they just want to come up and put on a good performance, look better than maybe they did a week ago. What would constitute a good performance from Houston this weekend? Obviously, it's a tall task. New coach, second week of the season, going on the road against a good Oklahoma team. What would be a successful Saturday for Houston this week?
I would say, like I said earlier, kind of look like you belong on the field. You know what I mean? it's one thing to lose, like you said. I think a lot of people are expecting Houston to go up here and lose, but not by like blown coverage or like those things that were a big problem last week. You can't look bad doing it, so to speak. You gotta give up a fight. I mean, they're a Big 12 team now. I know they're still in the process of strengthening the roster, but this is, I mean, 63 new faces, and that says a lot about, I think, the confusion. 63 guys they added in the offseason. So that's a big deal. You know what I mean? And you hope, like I said, that last week was a bit of an anomaly and they were able to get out there. We, for the first time ever, have access to practice. Since I've been doing this is my 16th season covering Houston. We've never had access other than like the first 20 minutes type deal, stretching and goofiness. But starting back in the spring, this staff gave us full access. We got full access during all of fall camp, and they're letting us out there this year for practice during the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So for that, it makes me feel like what I've seen with my eyes is not the way it looked last week. So I'm hopeful that they can probably get themselves turned around a little bit better and eliminate some of those mistakes that were going on last week.
The language of open practice still a little bit foreign to our ears. I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
I was shocked.
That's awesome. He is Rob Sellers with Cougars Digest 24/7 Sports, previewing the upcoming Week 2 Oklahoma-Houston game, 6:45 on SEC Network on Saturday night. Rob, take care of Kelvin and Kellen and Quanis and Hollis and all the Oklahoma guys over on the basketball side of things.
Tons of Oklahoma ties down here.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rob.
Special thank you to Rob Sellers from Cougars Digest to give us a little bit of an idea of what this program. I don't think that I realized how kind of lethargic and bad off just in general the Houston program was under Dana Holgorsen at the very end last year.
What was it that Rob said? 63 new players. I mean, that's
incredible.
That's a huge turnover, and I think that tells you what Willie Fritz is trying to do there. You think back to Oklahoma just a couple years ago and the turnover it had when Brent Venables came in. I'm sure there's a huge culture shift.
Yeah. I would imagine that Willie Fritz and Dana Holgorsen, in terms of coaching, are probably in the way that they run a program about the exact opposite, as Rob talked about with the open practices and all that kind of stuff.
And I think Willie Fritz is a hell of a football coach.
I think he's going to get it right at Houston.
I think it might take a year or two, or maybe even 3. Like, it might take some time,
especially if the Fertitta brothers are contributing to the NIL efforts. I would imagine they've taken care of Kelvin Sampson. I would imagine the football program is
they've got money down there in Houston. Obviously, a hotbed for recruiting, is our own Josh McQuiston can tell us. I think that they have, what was he saying, the second largest housing.
That's crazy.
It's a huge, it's one of the largest universities. It might be I think A&M's the largest in the state of Texas. Texas is up there too, but Houston's a massive school. So I think if they can get the right coach in there, which it might be Willie Fritz, they could be a really successsul program in the Big 12.
No doubt about it. The weekend is here, and that means that we have a bunch of football. Obviously, the NFL kicking off on Thursday night, and it is time to get out the prize picks.
Yep.
Because it is that time of the week where you're like, okay, you're starting to think about football. It is and obviously a really good deal. All you got to do is put in $5. Obviously, you got to download it first, but then use the code SoonerScoop, SoonerScoop, SoonerScoop. Play $5. You get $50 instantly from Prize Picks.
Oh, and it's so worth it. I played this last week, and
you're winning.
I'm up a few $100 actually winning. So last week had several picks in. I think I gave you guys a couple of winners actually on the show last week. This week, Eddie, my pick that I'm going to give out is Donovan Edwards over 51.5 rushing yards against Texas. I think they're going to be able to run the football, Michigan, against that Texas defensive line.
It's going to be interesting to see what Texas, or that just the Michigan offensive line versus Texas defensive line having to replace Sweat and Murphy in the middle, obviously.
I'm betting on Donovan Edwards having a big game. And then I'm taking Jackson Arnold over 282.
You're playing to the crowd.
Yeah, 282.5 yards this week. And that's because, last week, and we'll get into maybe here in a little bit, I think they're going to air the ball out a little bit. I think they're going to want to kind of show off. I know that last week they said vanilla. I think this week they throw the ball down the field a little bit. So those are my 2 picks this week. But like Eddie said, you can sign up. I have it on the app. Super easy to use. A lot of NFL great picks this week. I believe I have one in for Caleb Williams, I think I picked his over in passing yards, and then I took Lamar Jackson to throw a passing touchdown this weekend too. So I gave out 2 picks, guys.
Well, you gave out 4 picks right there.
4 picks,
those are 2 old picks.
Yeah, you got
weren't
it
they?
right.
I got you. I'm going to go with, starting on Thursday night, going to go straight into the NFL. Justin Tucker, why not?
Yep.
Over 1.5 field goals made. And then we'll go to Lincoln on Saturday. Shedeur Sanders, over 1.5 touchdowns thrown.
I like that.
In the game against Nebraska. I do think Nebraska gets them, clips them, we hope. But all you got to do is download Prize Picks and or go to the website and then obviously use the code Sooner Scoop to just put $5 in. You get $50 back from Prize Picks. It's a lot of fun to just have a little bit of skin in the game on a Saturday or a Sunday.
Makes them a little bit more
Thursday.
interesting. Maybe a game that you're not super into makes it a little bit more interesting.
Absolutely. Special thank you to Prize Picks. As we move forward, there's obviously been a lot of talk about the depth in terms of what we've seen with the safeties. We'll hear from Billy Bowman in a second talking about that group. I think you just turn on the television in the fourth quarter of the Temple game. You see Michael Boganowski run around. You see Jaden Hardy get the interception. Reggie Powers played a little bit. It's a really good group on top of that starting trio.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the future is so bright. And you're going to see a lot of Billy Bowman, Peyton Bowen, Robert Spears-Jennings, all 3 guys I think were 3 of their top highest graded players this past week against Temple. But, man, you feel really good about the future with those guys. I mean, Michael Boganowski might be the hardest hitting guy on the team. I know Billy Bowman said that this week. Jaden Hardy makes the interception. Reggie Powers is a guy that they feel like can play different spots, played some cheetah this past week. So the depth there is pretty remarkable considering where it was just a couple years ago.
Here is a little bit more from the post-practice with the players, talking to Damonic Williams, Trace Ford, as well as Billy Bowman.
We're going to respect them just like every other opponent.
Sure.
We know that they have that dog in them and that they're going to be a very important opponent to beat, and we just got to respect them as an opponent.
Different does the depth feel of this defensive line this year versus what y'all were rolling out last year?
Pretty stacked. Lots of freshness out there. No guys are getting tired. You're getting 4 snaps, 3 snaps coming off the field. Another crew's going out there, so you're always fresh. Not going to be tired. I feel like last year we had the depth. Just a lot more experience this year. A lot more experience on the D line. So it's very confident for the coaches.
How different do you feel compared to last year?
Confident. Last year, I was not very confident out there. Just a lot. The defense is very complicated to me, and this year, just knowing the plays, knowing what to do on which side of the ball, I have a lot of confidence this year playing.
That safety room's probably the deepest it's been since you've been here. How much does that help you just maybe stay fresh?
Yeah, it's definitely deep, and our whole secondary is. But it's helped me to stay fresh, both on and off the field. We got young freshmen, the 3 young freshmen we brought in. They're all ready to play, They're just inexperienced, But then, again, with Peyton and RJ being right next to me, we have a good rotation going on, and that's definitely the best in the nation.
What's impressed you about Michael Boganowski, and is he the hardest hitter on the team?
Yeah, it's crazy that you say a freshman is the hardest hitter on the team, but yeah, I think he probably is the hardest hitter on the team, and that's what he does well. I would say that's what stands out about him. Uncommon effort, fly to the ball, and will completely knock your head loose.
Not bad for the true freshman
loose.
Michael Boganowski with the words there from Billy Bowman. I did want to kind of highlight what Trace Ford said. He was there in the middle, the interviews there with some of the players, and he played quite a bit last week. And I thought just his discussion that he had on Monday about understanding the defense, the difficulty of understanding it last year, and not to mention he's probably as healthy as he's been since arriving in Norman. He's an interesting guy that maybe when we were going into the beginning of the season certainly never came up when we were talking about some of those first names that you think about when you're talking about the defensive end group.
He's someone that's going to play a lot this year. I truly believe that. You look at the snap counts this past week, Ethan Downs and R. Mason Thomas led the way, but that third guy was Trace Ford over Caden Woolard and PJ Adebawore. And I still think Caden Woolard and PJ are going to play quite a bit this season. They'll get more reps as this thing gets going. But Trace is somebody that's played a lot of football. I think last year he struggled at times just because he's coming off the injury. I think that, getting that confidence back was huge for him. And I think just grasping this defense. I mean, we've heard these guys talk about it. Billy Bowman even said, this is really, heading into his final year here, this is the first time that he really feels comfortable knowing what they want him to do. So just imagine a guy like Trace Ford. I know he's played a ton of football, but he's only in his second year here at Oklahoma. So I feel like he's finally figuring it out. I also just think that defensive end room is one that's super deep, and they're not having to just play two guys the whole game. You look at last year, and it was just Ethan Downs and Rondell Bothroyd that really led the way most of the season. You saw some Marcus Stripling at the end of the year, R. Mason Thomas when he got healthy, Trace Ford rotated in here and there, PJ too. But I feel like this year they have 5 guys that they really like. Trace is one of them, and you can see that explosiveness. I mean, there's a few plays this past week that he was really close. And so if he can be that same player, I mean, I think we forget how great of a player he was for Oklahoma State before the injuries. If he can get to 80% of that, Eddie, that's a really damn good football player that I think Oklahoma can use.
An old Big 12 type caliber when he was with the Pokes up in Stillwater. Here is a little bit more with Trace Ford, just talking about his comfort in year number 2.
What was the toughest part last year about getting that down?
Just knowing what to do on to the one side of the ball to the other. That was complicated as well. Just the defense. It was like versus pass you gotta do this, but versus run you do this, but versus the down block you have to do this, and just all these things in a one play that made it so just it was my head is always just hectic, and this year just like already knowing those plays, already knowing what to do, and having an idea of the defense just gave me a lot more confidence going forward.
You've talked a lot about just the mental aspect of the change in scenery, all the injuries at Oklahoma State. You feel more behind that than ever? Because it looked like you're out there, going 90-0, on Saturday.
Yeah, that's in the past now. My knee feels great. My body feels great. I feel really good. I feel loose. So I'm just excited for what's in store for this season.
It's going to be exciting to see this defensive line continue to evolve here over the next couple of weeks. Obviously,
they got a chance to be pretty good
into town. Yes, and I think that if this defense is going to take that next step, right, you're going to have to get better defensive line play than you got a year ago.
Definitely. I mean, we've talked about it. We voiced the concerns on offense enough, and I think the one thing that we said about the defense was, do they have a pass rush?
Sure.
Do they have a defensive line that, sure, they're better than what they used to be, but can they get after the quarterback? Can they create those game-changing plays that maybe you didn't see a year ago? I mean, they didn't have a great sack total last season. This year, it seems like they're on a much better pace for that. So I think that you need guys like a Trace Ford. I'm not saying Trace Ford needs to go out there and be the sack leader of the team, but if he can get a few this year, which I'm not sure he had one a year ago, you need somebody like that to be a difference maker in Ethan Downs, R. Mason Thomas, those guys on the edge, and then even the interior guys. I think that's kind of a big question mark is, they have some guys that have a lot of potential, but can they live up to those expectations?
Sure.
A Jaden Jackson, a Damonic Williams, Grayson Halton, who had a phenomenal first game. Like, those guys have to continue that. And I get it. It was Temple last week, and this week it's Houston, and it's really hard to say that they're going to continue to do that. We have to see it against a team like Tennessee, but this week is another step to see a lot of those guys. I think a lot of those guys are going to get some reps. Who stands out? And then you feel a lot better going to that Tennessee game, having guys have those reps and perform the way that they did this past week.
What would a game day preview be without mentioning Kindall Dolby? And that is somebody that you will be featuring on Soonerscoop.com come Friday morning, leading up into the game Saturday night. You've talked to a lot of people. Quite a fascinating road that led Kindall Dolby to a junior college, which isn't utilized very often nowadays, and then obviously to Norman.
Yeah, he was a standout at Springfield High School at Ohio, but really wasn't recruited. A couple MAC schools were interested in him out of high school, but he didn't get any Division I offers, and that was because of his grades. He really struggled in school early on, never able to recover. Ended up getting an offer from NEO out of the blue, goes there and becomes the number one JUCO product in the country at cornerback. And somehow Brent Venables found his tape and has turned him into really a critical player for Oklahoma. I don't want to give away too much of the story. You guys can check that out on Soonerscoop.com Friday morning. It's a really interesting feature about his journey, but just a really solid football player. You look at his height and weight and you would think this guy's the guy that's playing Cheetah, but he plays bigger than he looks. I think that he's really progressed in terms of understanding what they're asking him to do. Brent talked a lot about that. His attention to detail over the last year has been phenomenal. But then I think the way he plays, Eddie, he just fits exactly what they want in their cheetah position. He's all over the field. He's tipping balls. He's making sacks. He's kind of a rocket coming on those blitzes. You love to see that. So he's been one of their best players through fall camp. And obviously last week you saw him. It felt like he was in on every single play.
Yeah.
And I just think as the season goes on, Eddie, he's a guy you're going to see a lot of. He's just going to make play after play for Oklahoma.
Certainly has found a home at the cheetah position here as Brent Venables talking about Kindall Dolby's evolution at the position, as well as a defensive back mate, the aura thing with Kani Walker.
Yeah, again, he plays big. He's really skilled, but he's got great natural instincts for the game. Incredibly competitive, physically and mentally tough. He can cover man-to-man. He chews up a lot of grass quickly. Some guys really fast, maybe on a watch, but getting from A to B incrementally slow. And he knows most of the time what the right angle is. He's a physical tackler. He gets guys down. He's a real speed to contact player. And then he's becoming more detailed. And a year ago, he got thrown into the proverbial fire from corner, to not playing. And I spoke about this, a month or so ago, why we put him there right away. And then we had some guys get injured, Justin Harrington and then Desan. And he immediately, we moved him inside because we were like, well, we felt that because he played that in junior college too, mainly inside, had safety, and then in the slot.
That boy a dog. Yeah. Straight like that. That boy a dog. Like covering, blitzing, all that. That boy a dog. So he plays a big role in our defense. I love Dolby. Dolby like my one too. So I love Dolby a lot.
A little bromance back there. I like it. It's going to be kind of fun to see how he continues to evolve, because the way that even Brent talked about him in the week leading up into the Temple game, it was like if he could have 11 of those guys on the defensive side of the football, he would take them.
I mean, the way he talked about him a week ago when he said that he's one of the most competitive players he's ever coached, that's saying something. Considering some of the guys that he's coached in his career, whether it was at Oklahoma and a Teddy Lehman or Clemson and Isaiah Simmons, like some of these great football players, to say Kindall Dolby is in that same category in terms of mindset and competitiveness, I think is a testament to Kindall. Brent also said this week that everybody on the team loves Kindall Dolby, and I think that speaks to the character. And I think it's also, Eddie, he's a guy, look, he might not be the biggest guy out there, but he's a football player. And I think that's what Brent wants to build his program around. It may not always be the guy that's, 5 stars. Obviously, they want to get all the 5-star guys. But if you can find those hidden gems, those guys that just have great football instincts, know how to play football, love the game, and are really detailed and focused in on getting better as a player and a person, I think that Kindall kind of represents that in terms of what Brent wants to build his program around.
Kind of described me as a player.
Yes, that's exactly.
Back in the day. Glue guy. A little bit better Kindall Dolby is than what I was. In terms of offense, I know that we've been really defensive heavy this week, but I think the kind of the big markers for what you want to see on Saturday night, they're pretty obvious, right? Like the offensive line stuff, you got to be able to move people off the football, especially a team that almost gave up 200 yards on the ground last week to UNLV.
Yep.
Wide receiver-wise, it's going to be interesting. I know that we hit on Jaquez Petaway on Tuesday during the practice report. Seems like he's going to have a bigger opportunity. And like you said at the top of the program today, they're going to have plenty of opportunity. You would like to see them maybe get downfield a little bit more.
Yeah, and, I think that Nick Anderson, if he plays, that's kind of another question mark. Is he going to be able to give it a go? I don't think that injury is serious. It's another one of those situations where, kind of like Jake Taylor, you could hold them another week.
I mean, there was social media posts last night that make you think they have 0 scholarship players in the wide receiver position.
Yeah, they're just missing out on I won't say. Never mind. But I think that Nick Anderson being back would be huge. That's what I'll say about that. But I do think that the receiver position, I think Andrell Anthony could have a big game this week. I wouldn't be shocked if they let him loose a little bit more. Deion Burks obviously is going to be a big part of it. And then I'm interested to see, how does J.J. Hester and Brennan Thompson, how do those guys bounce back?
Absolutely.
Because I do think that, I know there's some people out there like, don't play him, or especially Hester. I know there's a lot of people that are frustrated with him getting on the field. They're going to give those guys more opportunities, and they want to see if they can, correct those mistakes. And then the young guys, I think we've talked a lot about some of those freshmen. Can an Ivan carry on, a Zion Kearney, Zion Reagans? Like, can those guys step up and maybe make a difference this week too? I think you're going to see a little bit of all those. But the big thing for me, Eddie, you want to see him get, maybe around 500 yards of total offense this week, be able to run the ball consistently, and then let Jackson Arnold throw it deep a few times. And I think that they were looking for some of that a week ago, maybe not as much. I do think they'll dial it up maybe a little bit more, let him throw it. Offensive line obviously has to be able to protect to do that. So that's kind of a big question mark, but I do think that you'll see this offense maybe be a little bit more explosive this week.
So I can get you on the record with the line of thinking that Andrell Anthony will contribute at some point this season.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, I think
I was led to believe differently online.
Yeah, no, I know. Again, no comment on that social media post that's making the rounds, but I think I'll go even. Here's my bold take. I think Andrell Anthony finds the end zone this Saturday.
Interesting. Well, that would be more than contributing nothing.
Yes,
a touchdown.
Yep. I think he'll score several this year, in fact.
Very interesting. Oklahoma and Houston, week 2, 6:45 Saturday night. SEC Network. I'm so used to just saying ESPN. SEC Network as part of the ESPN family.
Hopefully DirecTV figures it out.
That's a situation.
Yeah.
And it's not a fun situation. Real quick, I know that we're going into the Houston week, but next week for the Tulane week, our good friends with Home Field are going to be down here in Norman hosting some pop-up shops Thursday, September 12th, 4 to 7, a little bit of a happy hour over at the Standard just north of Campus Corner on Main Street. Friday, September 13th from 4 to 7. You can get all of your Home Field needs at the Coach's Corner over there on the corner of Lindsay and
new restaurant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. It's where the Penny Hill used to be.
Penny Hill used to be, Texadelphia back in the day for my generation. And then on Saturday before the game, 10 to 1 p.m., the Boomer Student Brunch just across the street over at the Down Hotel, which is a lovely, lovely place.
Yeah, I'm sure you and I will be over there hanging out.
Absolutely.
Family business guys. I know that they've got some gear. I know my girlfriend has some Home Field gear.
No doubt.
That she'll be rocking. So definitely come out and see all the stuff that they have to offer.
Absolutely. Looking forward to that. That is next week for the Tulane game, and we will be sure to remind you about that on the practice report and the game day preview, all that kind of stuff coming up next week. But that's going to do it for the game day preview featuring the Houston program coming up on Saturday evening. We'll be back right here post-game for an instant reaction from down on the field. So for George Stoia, I'm Eddie Radosevich. We will see you right back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel.